This is Andrea with Parking Lot Debrief. All right, awesome. I'm here with Amanda Smith. I know Amanda because I went through the Western Oregon University Master's Interpreting program. What is it?
Studies, interpreting
Studies. Thank
studies.
you.
Yeah.
MAIS. Yes. And she was one of my instructors. I believe also, yes, you were on my committee for my thesis.
Yep.
And then I found your podcast and I'm like, wait, I know this person. And so I thought, well, I need to have her on and have a chit chat. So can you give us a short bio, who you are, what you do? Yeah, anything you feel like sharing.
Yeah. Thanks so much for inviting me to chat with you. I'm excited about what you're doing here. Yeah, I'm Amanda Smith, and I am an interpreter by training, is how I always introduce myself. And I have been an educator in academia since the early 2000s. And I've been at Western since 2006, 2007 in a full-time capacity. I still do interpret from time to time. It's gotten less over the years as I've taken on administrative positions and things like that at Western Oregon University. But I still do interpret, and my specialty is courtroom interpreting. That is my favorite.
Nice.
And my first love is interpreting, even though I enjoy teaching too. But yeah.
First love interpreting. Yeah. But I don't know you in the interpreting capacity. We've never worked together in
Yeah.
that way. I only know you
Hmm.
instructor capacity and
Hmm.
helping me through a thesis as I
Yeah.
cry. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
sure that's your experience often.
Yeah.
Um, First question I have is your
Yeah.
podcast.
Hmm.
When did this start? Why?
Hmm.
I guess those two questions first.
Yeah. So over the
What is it called?
it's called Amanda's Musings,
There you go.
and the first season is called The Connected Interpreters, the first season.
Okay.
And then there will be more seasons as we come, and we can talk about my
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
plans for that if we want. But it's called Amanda's Musings, and first, I'll just say that I love podcasts. I listen to podcasts all the time. I get lots of insights from podcasts. I get lots of percolations from podcast, all of that kind of stuff. And I think I started playing around with a podcast because I was actually hosting a training on somatics and interpreting as an extension of coach work that I do. And I thought podcast was a great medium for it. So I started a private podcast, so only people who I let listen to it can listen to it, and talked through some of the somatic stuff and made it so that people could listen to it on the fly and in between jobs and whatever as a professional development kind of tool. Um, and then I decided I'm in the process of leaving my position at Western Oregon University and wanting to really document kind of that journey, document what I learned there, what I contributed there, all of those kinds of things, just for myself more than anyone else. Um, and so the Connected Interpreter season came out of some work I was doing with undergrads in the last couple of years and thinking about the multifacetedness of interpreting, that it is not just language, it is not just anything, it is a bunch of things, and being connected to ourselves and to others and that sort of thing was something that I wanted to start having conversations around, even though ultimately it's just for me to capture and document my process. I certainly would welcome conversations around it.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah.
it's just you chatting and probably getting
Hmm.
out all the things that you've taught through the years and learned through the
Yeah.
years, in shorter form,
Yeah.
15, 20,
Yep.
30 minutes. And you've had a few people on, right? You've interviewed a
I
few
have.
people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So the kind of generic design is that each of the seasons will include things that are documenting my thought process and my kind of development as a practitioner, whether that's as a teacher or an interpreter or a whatever. And then also include interviews with people who can speak to some of those aspects as well. So yeah, I had two interviews for the Connected Interpreter season,
Yeah. When did
series,
you
season. I don't know
start
the right
this?
word.
Hmm. I don't know. I'm faking it, man. I don't know how to
I
do that
know. Yeah,
podcast.
I don't know. Season, series, something like that. Yeah, no, it sounds a lot more put together than it actually is, right? Yeah.
Right.
I started it. I
Officially, like
started
out.
percolating about it. Yeah, I started percolating about it probably spring of 24, to the point, percolating meaning closer to action than like, I wonder what it'd be like to have a podcast. Right? Like not that,
Yeah.
but like actually like putting energy into it.
Mm.
And I think I recorded it over the summer and then I launched it in fall of 24, um, on a weekly basis, I'm pretty sure is what I did. Um, And that, I mean, we could have a conversation about how you make those kinds of decisions because I don't know what's right or wrong, but it just is.
Chat
So I
GPT has
recorded
not helped me.
all of them. Yeah,
Right.
right?
I'm like, do you
Yeah,
have advice? And they're like, no, this is
right.
what people do. I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't know what else to ask.
yeah. So I recorded all of them
Nice.
and then I released them. Um, I
Yeah.
I have certainly been um I've talked with other people and other podcasters about this too, and I think it just depends who you are as a human. And I am not the type of person who can do a weekly podcast that I record and put out in every week. So I needed to, at least for this portion of it, do it in a batch way. And so I recorded my thoughts and then released them on a weekly basis for
Yeah.
10 or 12 weeks.
I'm learning that. I have to have things built up because I don't want to feel a panic in the week that I need to do something.
Exactly.
It has to
Because
be
that's not
all ready.
inspiring. Like if
Well,
I'm
and
panicked, I'm not going to have anything to say.
that's so true.
Yeah.
That is very true.
Yeah.
And then the last I saw was when did it, and then it ended. I mean, the season was done and then there's no more releases around October.
Probably. That probably sounds right. Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah. So in theory, I would have recorded the next thing in over Christmas break, because I kind of was thinking about my academic year in those kind of seasons of like, I know I'm not going to be able to do it during an academic term, so I need to do it when I'm not on an academic term. And then it didn't happen.
Right.
So I do have some percolations bubbling up right now. And as weird as it sounds, I probably will do recording over spring break, which is in another maybe month or so. Um, Even though it's only a week and Christmas break was much longer, I have the right energy percolating right now, to record the next kind of bit of things. I'm not saying necessarily all of the second season about teaching, but a good chunk of it. I think I'll figure out the structure that I want and kind of the high points that I want to hit, invite some people to come and play, and then kind of get a schedule worked out. So yeah, and um, you know, if I were like a proper podcaster, I would have like a quarterly schedule. And I have a semi-quarterly schedule that is very Amanda based.
Because the
And at some point
goal,
there will be a catalog.
right? There'll be enough
Right?
there. People can look
Yeah,
back through. Because
exactly.
then if you record in the spring, this will all come out late spring, early summer.
Exactly. And then in the summer I'll record more.
Yep. There's
Yeah.
no rules. That's what I'm
No,
enjoying. And no one
me
really can tell me
too.
what to do and I can figure it
No,
out.
I'm
And
gonna
the
do it the
advice
way I
I'm
do it.
getting is like, well, the intro has to have a really long music intro. And I'm like, I don't give a
Yeah.
shit about what
Yeah.
the intro
Yeah.
that mine is two strums of me playing the ukulele. That
Oh,
is
I
what
love
I chose to
that.
do. And
Yes.
I just, there are no rules because I believe your goal is the same. My goal is not millions of followers to make
Yep.
big. And a lot of people's
No.
may be that. Often I feel like podcasts are passion projects for many topics and people.
100%. Yeah.
It's an outlet. It's a
Yeah.
way to have these conversations. If it gets big
Yes.
and gets around, great, because then the info is
Sure.
being shared. But yeah, that's why I'm like the rules don't matter as much because I don't care.
And that was definitely one of my things of like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it on my own terms.
Have to.
I'm not, and the other thing too is that mine are, like you said, short form, except for the interviews, and not edited almost at all.
Same. I've not
Almost at all.
same.
Because they won't ever be published if I have to edit them. And so I just have to be okay with being who I am in all that means and publishing it, which is scary. And
Very.
then I have to just be in the right headspace for it when I'm recording and then putting it out there. And I think that's kind of why I like the batch release model, is that like the anxiety of the batch recording then dissipates
Yep.
in time for the release. And then you kind of forgot that you did it. And then it
Yep.
releases and you're like, well, it's out there now. I guess we'll just see what happens.
Yes. Yes.
So it
I
has to be on my terms. I'm not going to do it according to anyone else's terms
thank
because then it won't happen.
thank you. And I'm feeling that too, because a lot of people have a lot of things to say about what I'm trying to
So many
do,
opinions.
how
Yeah.
I'm doing it, and that's great. And my
Sure.
response is cool. Do your own.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And I'm happy to hear them. Like, I'm happy to
yes,
hear
yes.
ideas and maybe like, oh,
Is
that is a good idea.
helpful, yes.
But I also just know I'm never the person, like one of the podcasters that I really enjoy, she has like a date on her calendar every, let's say, Wednesday to record, and then she edits Wednesday night and she publishes Friday morning or something like that. And I'm like, that is never going to be Amanda's life.
Right.
That is just never going to be how I function. Well, I shouldn't say never. It's not currently within the reality of what I do. It could happen someday, I suppose, but I can't wait for that to happen in order to put stuff out there.
And I want to say we say all this just so people understand our process, just so people
Yeah.
understand it's a lot. I'd say one episode for me, which is you and I talking for 1 hour on
Yep.
each end before and after,
Yeah.
total 4 hours for one episode.
Easily. Yeah.
And so
Yep.
I'm not editing either. And other than the beginning and maybe a
For
clip,
sure.
a few we have taken a time out to go to the bathroom or something, but like
Of course.
people ask that you got to do all this editing. I'm like, not really.
No.
We're going with what we're saying because it's
I'm only doing
real.
it if I don't have to edit.
Same.
Yeah. And quite frankly, those are the podcasts I listen to too. So, like, if people are interested in podcasts, pay attention to what you're interested in, because that's
Yes.
probably the kind of podcast you want to make. So, if you're interested in a highly edited podcast that has, bits and things and mabobs, then that's probably what you'll make. I am interested in the free flowing kind of stream of consciousness. You know what I was thinking about the other day? Kind of chit chat,
Yes.
right? Like, those are the podcasts I'm interested in.
Same.
And I don't want overly polished and I don't want perfect and I don't want to be perfect. I don't even want to look perfect in the editing process.
Same.
I just want to have real conversations that evolve and change over time and are informed by
Yes.
the conversations that I have.
Can I ask, you don't have to tell, what is the
Of course.
next series topic types going to be?
So the next one that I want to do is more generically called teaching interpreting.
Okay.
Well, that's probably not what it's going to be called, but like
Right, of
something
course.
about teaching. And it's going to be about my philosophy of teaching and how I view aspiring interpreters as well as adult learners in a more general sense. And also some of the things that I see and have seen in my unique position. So, getting to be a graduate faculty member, so working with graduate students, that means I get students from all kinds of different programs around the country. And to see the very informal data that I've collected over the last 12, 13 years of having a graduate program, we are we are not kind. We are not a kind
Ah,
group. And we are not kind in training. And so we do a lot of uh, healing in our program. We
yeah,
try, right? We try to address some of that, and we try to do some of the healing and the repair work so that people can stay in the field, or find their path out. That's also fine. Like we're not
right.
necessarily if this is a path for you, great. Let's help you find the path that is for you. And so I do want to talk about some of those kinds of things, like just the damage that we do because we replicate how we were trained. And luckily, I was really influenced early on in my career to think differently about that. So I remember reading something I think I was maybe not even a teacher at the time, like just very new in the field. And I remember reading an article in a training that was called "Do We Really Have to Sink Before We Can Swim?" And it was this idea of you
Yes.
just got to throw people into the deep end and they'll figure out how to swim. And like I get that when you're new as a field, as an industry, I get it on some level because yes, you will survive. You will not drown if you figure out how to doggy paddle or whatever. But once we know, couldn't we take you through the shallow end and then get you into the deep end and get you
You
prepared and
think,
get the muscles and get right? Like, couldn't we do that differently? Um, and so that's what I feel like I've been about. So I want to do a podcast about that. And I want to interview some people who have been instrumental in my learning and in my teaching approach. Because I've been very fortunate at one of my early jobs in the interpreting profession was coordinating professional development on a grant. And I got to bring in amazing people who are great, founders of the field kind of people, right? And get to sit under their teaching. And I had no business being there because I was just a new interpreter, but because I was the coordinator, I got to sit in on it, you know? So yeah, I want to talk about and document some of that kind of stuff for a wider
What a
conversation.
what a resource. I'm sure you've been. I have not been to CIT.
Yeah.
Spell what consortium of
Conference of
interpreter
Interpreter Trainers.
conference of
Yeah.
interpreter trainers. I've not been, but I'm like,
Hmm.
man, I love if they had a podcast. As a I
Right.
teach some classes, I'm like,
Sure.
what are you doing over there? And
Yeah.
especially your point of view, which I'm just now wading into, I feel like your point of view of teaching adult learners, but like
Yeah.
adults, like people are
Yeah.
actually 35 and 40 years old versus
Yep.
19 and now so
It's different. The
it's
brain.
so different.
The brain is
And
different.
you're getting a collection of humans from across the US. And granted, you
Yes.
may not be seeing their skills. I've been working lately with no more mentors, no more new students, ITP, not even recent graduates. I'm helping people prep for CASLI stuff. So, like,
Sure.
you're a working
Sure.
interpreter. And I'm like, man, the variety of human beings and the sign
Yes.
styles and what you even understand about conceptual accuracy, what you don't even think that's important.
Right.
Like, seeing what programs across the US are teaching people is like
It's
mind
so,
blowing.
so varied.
It's so varied, and that's why it's such a mess sometimes. Like this is insanity.
Well, I don't think we all mean the same thing when we talk about interpreting
No,
or interpreter
no.
education. Like I think that's fundamentally the issue, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Despite research, despite conversations, despite conferences, despite a lot of things, we still don't have a consensus about what any of these things mean
no.
or what it takes to be successful doing them or what our community needs. And certainly there's different communities that need different things, and I'm all for that, right? But fundamentally, could we have some consensus about what we do and why we do it and why it matters?
Right. And keeping on the teaching thing, I guess I've
Yeah,
got other stuff, but I'll go back
for
to it.
sure.
But on the teaching thing, we've done it for a while.
Hmm.
What have you learned? I mean, you're going to talk about it for a whole season, and it's going to be
Yeah,
such a great resource for interpreters, instructors. Like that's
yeah.
super crucial because those conversations aren't happening. Y'all don't get to stand in the parking lot like we do after
It's
assignments
not
as
the same.
interpreters.
Yeah,
You do, but
yeah,
in a different way. But when? And it's only these colleagues, it's not
yep. It's not
everybody.
all everyone. Yep,
Ugh,
yep, yep.
what do we know of
What
others?
have I learned?
Yeah, what have you
Go ahead.
learned? Like
Yeah,
what have you seen or what changes have you noticed from the beginning of your teaching? Granted, you changed along those years
a
and
hundred
learned a
percent.
lot. But
Yeah.
like I've taught for 5 years max, and I already am like, whoa, there's a difference in the students. Like already I
Hmm.
can
Oh
see
yeah.
it's just generation and society and or what changes have you noticed in the students in teaching or in the field,
Hmm.
I guess in general.
Yeah, I would say generally speaking, people want to be of service. People want to contribute positively. People want to do good work.
Yes.
They aren't always equipped to do it. And we don't always know how to equip them. Because some of the things, like if you think about interpreter education since the 60s, um, who taught interpreting? Usually just people who were good at interpreting.
Right?
That doesn't mean they're good at transferring that skill to someone else. That's actually a different skill set, right? So not knocking that in any way. Like I don't know who else you'd get when you're new
Right.
than somebody
Right.
who's good at it and be like, could you do that with other people? Right?
Watch
Like,
them. Right.
great. But fundamentally, it's not the same thing, right? And then there's this understanding of what interpreting is, and we often think it's just language. And so then we end up with interpreting programs, I'm air quoting, that really are language acquisition programs. And so you didn't actually even learn how to interpret. You only learned languages, right?
Because
And
you had
kind
two
of
whole
learned them.
years. You
Right.
had two
Yeah.
whole years to figure it all out at
Exactly.
19. Good
Exactly.
luck.
Yeah.
Bye.
And that's the thing. Like, so we have a master's program that also is for entry level interpreters. The one you went through was for advanced and teaching track. But we have a track for entry level interpreters too. And because 2 years isn't enough, 4 years isn't enough, a master's isn't enough, because it's not about enoughness. you're going to learn on the job. So it's like, so I have, and not because it's a bad thing, but because that's how it works, right?
Right.
It's a practice profession. You practice with people and you figure it out and you refine as you go. Like, yes, you need to be to a base place before you can do that, but you fundamentally are learning as you go. So are we teaching them the structure of how to learn as they go? Or are we teaching them skills that are like check boxes? Are we, that sort of thing. So I think I think the other thing I've seen change, like you were saying about like the students themselves, like generational kinds of things, is that our schooling systems have so changed that the people that make it to us
Right.
are typically, I would say, from two vantage points, creme de la creme, because they are high achievers, they want to do well, they want to contribute, they want to get all A's. So they're high achievers,
Which
creme de la
also
creme,
can be tough.
and 100% full of anxiety because they will never be
Oh,
perfect, right? And so
yes.
if they're not perfect, they're worthless.
Yes.
Yikes. We
Yes.
can't, that, no, like that's not a good way to be a human, right?
Right.
And it's definitely not a good way to be in human services because you are never going to be perfect. That's not
No.
even a thing. And if you're worthless unless you're perfect, right? Like that's not,
Right.
oh my gosh, poor little
No.
hearts, right? It's just a rough spot to be in. Um, and we want to have candor, we want to have rigor in our curriculum, and we want to be candid with people about what I see and what I don't see. And part of the ways that I approach feedback and work and all of that kind of stuff is just data driven. Like it's not a value statement, it's just data. But when we receive it as a value statement, when we receive it as, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not right, that's not a good position to be in for learning.
Is that where, when you're saying you've seen all these people come through in the master's program with like, ooh, the programs they came from, and like,
Yeah,
this is what we learned. We internalized this shit and we are down on ourselves and
yeah,
we're down on each other.
yes.
The throw you in the deep end.
Hmm.
Like, what is the approach then? Because there's a weird happy medium. The one thing that I succeed at with teaching that I think is just a human thing, I'm very real and tell you how it is, but I also make it okay to mess up. Like I feel
Yeah.
like there's a lot of times there's not space to just be bad. I'm like, you're supposed to suck right now, bro. Like you're
Yeah. This
supposed
is
to
where you
be
would want to
bad.
do it.
Like this is
Hmm.
exactly what we're here for. And that
Hmm.
gives them a comfort of like, okay, I'm supposed to suck right now. I'm not supposed to be as good as you. I'm like, why would you be? I've done this for 20 years.
Totally.
So I wrote down that in every other episode, and you're already saying it, it starts even when they start the program, a lot of unpacking of your stuff.
Yeah.
And there's no more room for credits, classes to fit in that 2 years. So we can't add a class
Yeah.
of self-worth. Like we can't.
Right? Yeah.
So where in, and this is just a human thing. So
Yeah.
like that's a really hard one because it translates into our work and all through our career. I can meet people who've done this job forever and they're like, ugh. I'm like, where they're upset because they signed something wrong. And I'm like, I mess up every day, all the
Right?
time.
Right? Totally. Yeah. And I think like you said, it's a human thing, right? So but then how do we humanize in our teaching and how do we care for people well? And one of the ways that I have changed significantly over this time is that early on when I got into teaching because I wanted to have a say in the next generation. I
Same.
wanted something to be different in the next generation and I
Yep.
wanted to contribute to that. And it came from a place of very much concern for the consumers that we serve, getting the services that they need, the access to the things that they need, right? And so my early teaching years, I would say out loud, but also in my brain. So even if I didn't say it out loud, this was the frame that I was coming from, was I can't actually care about you, students, and your feelings because they're second to consumers getting services. They're second to this, right?
Do you feel like that's a thing? I feel like that's
I
very,
wonder, it could
I
be.
feel, but it comes across because you're a very kind person and that comes across in
Well,
your
that
teaching at
that was
least.
pre-transition. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of teachers who are like, you better not mess this up. Their lives are
Yep.
on the line. I'm like, I understand the
Yes.
seriousness of it.
Yes.
Absolutely. But
Yes.
also,
Yeah. So then what I kind of came to was, and it was around my first sabbatical, and I ended up studying the kind of interpreter as person and practitioner, so the
Mm,
intrapersonal kind of aspects of being an interpreter. And like, no, I need to care about them so that they will care about consumers. Like, I actually do, I can't afford not to care about them. I can't afford to dismiss their feelings and dismiss those kinds of things. Now, that does not mean I'm all kumbaya and like, let's, how do you feel? Like, we're not a counseling program, right? I'm still
right.
very matter of fact. I'm still data driven. I'm still all of those kinds of things. And I want to help other people also be able to just see data and then also be aware of who they are kind of as practitioners. But I do think that we have an overemphasis in our field of mistake and error focus. Um,
Ah,
and that they are all egregious. So a mispronunciation is the end of the world. Really? Because I do that all the time in my L1. Just saying.
right,
There have been several in this podcast so far, I'm sure. Some of which I've chosen to fix, and some of which I've been like, close enough, right? Like
right,
it's like
right.
we're getting the point across, right? So this idea that we have to be absolutely perfect in our L2 is just dumb.
From
We need to
instructors
be
or from,
good.
right. Who is this strictness from? Instructors or students? Both?
Yeah, all of the above, I
Yeah.
think. I mean, I just think that there is this. And I would say from our literature. So one of the things that I talk about in our graduate program, and I just did a coach training this last weekend, training coaches for interpreting work. Um, and I was talking with them about like a lot of the literature talks about error analysis and omission analysis, and it's all this deficit focused analysis, which is really fascinating from a research perspective. But what we focus on grows. So if I'm only looking at errors, as opposed to looking at the things that I did well or how I repaired something or how I triaged and made a decision
Yes.
about something, right? So then I was working with my undergrads a couple weeks ago, and they were working on a video that is Oregon specific. So it had the kind of acronym for a specific office in the state of Oregon, right? And we were talking about the errors that they made because they're not all from Oregon, right? So they don't know this office, right? So some of them said things like the office is ODHHS is the office name, right? And so some of them said in their interpretation ODHS, and some of them said in their interpretations OSD, which is the Oregon School for the Deaf, a whole different organization. So we were talking about the triaging of that error, right? Is ODHS wrong? Yeah. Is it less wrong than OSD? Yeah. If I have limited energy, which one of those am I fixing? Ideally, all of them. Sure, all of them. But if I only have limited amounts of energy and time, I'm probably going to fix the OSD one because it's so wrong.
Right.
Like, I'm telling you, reach out to ODHHS to get these services, but I accidentally said OSD, that's really wrong,
Right.
right? As opposed to I missed an H. Like,
People
not all
do
mistakes are
get
created
it.
equal. Right.
That's very true.
Exactly.
I like looking into it's an error, but I like talking, Sam. I like talking about coping mechanisms. What do we
Yeah.
do? I missed the acronym. I missed which town you went to. What
Yep.
can I say instead? Or what
Yep.
can I do to fill that until I can catch it later? Does this come up again? For sure, I'm going to
Exactly.
clarify. Or
Yep.
I went to a town over here, starts with an F. I can't remember. And then just keep going. Or what
Yep.
is, it's wrong. It's not exactly sure,
Uh-huh.
but again, we're not perfect.
And neither is communication.
Right.
Like I'm really not sure where we got this message about perfection in communication
Every word.
because it's so wrong. Like communication is the messiest thing we do as humans. Okay, that's a lie, but it's one of the messiest things we do as humans.
My favorite thing is watching two deaf people dog or have a group of deaf people and
Yes.
how many times they clarify each other. Wait, say this
Yes.
again. What do you mean? And I'm like,
Yes.
ooh, it's
All the time.
it's okay. It's natural. I don't know. I just
And from a linguistics perspective, I would also argue that ASL is much more dialogic in terms of how we create meaning and understanding in ASL is meant to be in dialogue. It's meant to
yes.
be in negotiation. That's how meaning gets made in ASL, differently than in English, where you can have monologic kinds of things where we can still co-create the meaning, but I don't have to have as much negotiation with you in order to understand each other. Like it just is that just is the way it is. So the
Context.
idea that I would interpret without ever having any clarification needed, well, then no one's paying attention, probably. Right?
Right.
It doesn't mean you're perfect. It means no one was paying attention.
Right.
because it just is a natural part of how meaning gets made in ASL.
I think that's such a key thing that released me in after what, 8, 10 years
A
of
long
work.
time.
It
Yeah.
released me of I mean, I'm still nervous and for jobs.
Of
Of course, you
course.
should be because you care,
Yes.
but it released me to not feel bad. But it does take a level of skill to get there. You have to
It
not, you
does.
can't every day, day one of your interpreting career, be like, I'm allowed to mess up all the time. And I'm like, that's not what we're saying. So, like,
No.
there's a weird
Yeah.
line that has to be clarified. And I say that to students, and yeah, yeah,
Well, and I think it's a nuancy thing, right? Because it's not about you have to be perfect, but it's more about that the mistakes are not all created equal.
yes,
Because there are just regular mistakes and I wouldn't even call them mistakes, they're just misspeaks or they're mispronunciations or they're I got the words in the wrong order kind of things that just happen in normal communication. And then there are legitimate mistakes, right? So the example I always give is if I were to sign school with both my palms facing up, it's just wrong. Like that, it's
right,
not, I can't say like, well, close and like it's not, it's just wrong.
right,
Palms face each other and then you get school. You can't have both palms facing up to say school, right? So there is a whole category of things where it's just wrong. It just is. And I'm not going to have a feelings conversation with you about it. I'm just going to say that's not how you say that, the same way that I would say it in English, right? So the
right.
example I always give is my kids when they were little. We encouraged a lot of reading, and we encouraged them to not let not understanding a word or not knowing how to pronounce a word in their heads trip them up, right? And so my son, he was probably like, I don't know, 9 or 10, comes to the breakfast table and he's talking all about the magic in this, the magic in that, the magic in this, the magic in that. And I was like, tell me more about the magician. Like what tell me more about what they did and what they did. And eventually I was like, oh, the magician.
Oh,
Magician is what you're looking.
magician.
Magician, right? Yeah. So he totally knew what it was. He totally, but it was wrong. Magician is wrong, right?
But the
Magician is
concept, the
correct.
understanding was all
Yeah,
still
he
there.
totally got
So,
it.
oh, I love that.
I loved his response though, because I said, oh, magician. And he said, I say magician. It's like, all right. And he
Cool.
doesn't now. Now he's
Right.
24 and he says magician. He doesn't say magician. But
That's right.
at the time, right? Like it's a it's wrong. And
Right.
also we were able to have a communication about it, you know?
I'll say that ties into team interpreting too. The nuance of
Mm,
when do I fix it,
yes.
when do I not?
Yep.
And I think it's a gut thing, it's a experience
Yep.
thing. And I'd
Yep.
say that's the one that drives me nuts. If you fix a word where I'm like, I think we all understood what we meant here.
Yep.
Or like, so that's another piece of
Yes.
nuance. Yeah.
Which is an energy management thing too, right? So like if you're going
Yes.
to correct something that we all understood, that means you probably missed the next thing that was bad and I could have really used your help on.
Yes.
Right?
You
So
just,
so let's
yes.
triage these things in such a way that we're not fixing things that are like, yeah, no, that's I mean that's not how I would have said it, but yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, it makes sense. I get it. Let's focus on the things that are like, yeah, that's not what they said. No, no, stop. That's not what they said.
Right.
Focus on those ones, not the
And
ones
those
that are
are,
like
that's teachable, you're
I
saying.
think so. I
Okay.
think so. But
Because
I
I
don't
think
know that I
so.
figured out how
Right. I'm like, I
precisely other than a lot of repetition,
was gonna
right? A
say it's a
lot of
lot of
practice, a lot of
discussion.
like, why would it be this one and not this one,
Yes.
kind of thing. Because even the example I was giving you of the acronyms from a couple weeks ago, my students were like, "You're saying there's something you wouldn't fix?" And I'm like,
Oh,
"Yeah."
yes. Black or
Like
white.
if I don't have the energy to do it and it's
Yep.
low on this, like if I have all the energy in the world, I'm fixing all the things that I recognize.
Of course.
But if I have things that I got to do and they're still talking and I got to then I have to triage. I don't have another word for that, but I have to triage. Is this going to kill something or maim something? Or is this a recoverable thing? Or is it so bad I just abandon it? Like I have to triage in the moment. And I don't know that I know how I do that. Like you said, it's a gut, but there is a level of it is the gut, but I do think
Hmm.
our guts are informed. And that's the
Yes.
piece that I'm not sure how it's
How to
informed by
teach.
just being humans, but then what else has informed my gut around those things? I watch other people and whether they understood it or not, right? Because I think we've both encountered new interpreters who just interpret the same thing 3 times because they're not really sure it made sense the first time. So then they just do it
Yes.
again, and then they do it again,
Yes.
and then they do it again.
Yes.
And you're like, they got it already, right?
Right.
Like, stop
Yes.
trying. They got it already. But
Yes. Makes it
are they not
worse.
seeing the
Stop.
cues? Exactly. Are they not seeing the cues that they understood it the first time? Like,
Right.
and how do you train that? How do you train them to
Ooh,
see the little, very little nuance that is like, oh yeah, I got
time.
you,
It's
right?
time and
Exactly.
experience, exposure. But again,
Yep.
like if I don't know that I said ODS versus ODHHHS wrong, I
Exactly.
can't even fix it if I don't know,
No.
which
No.
skills number one, like at least have the foundation of
Yes.
that. So
Yes.
that's what teaching is really hard. I have a hard time deciding if I should teach, and I should know the word for this, and you're going to know it. Should I teach the model of the that this happens and then this
Yeah.
processing and then this?
Processing
Should I
models.
teach
Yep.
that? To me, does not help. Does not help me in my process. What I like to do is we practice and we practice again and we do it again and we do it again and we do it again. And always tell the students, I'm like, I remember I was training for a 15-mile run thing
Yep.
race, and my
Yep.
husband's an ultra runner, and I was like, what program should I do? Lay it all out. And he's like, you put your shoes on and you go outside and you just start running. And I'm like,
Hmm.
no, but like when and how much? And he just kept saying, just go run. And that's what I keep telling students. I was like, you just got to do it. And that's
Hmm.
like my way of teaching. And I know there's other ways of teaching, of following a very way to do it. And I'm like, that doesn't feel good to me or right. And I don't know if I'm wrong. I don't know if I'm incorrect.
I think you're in the realm of strategies, right? So
Right.
I there are particular models that I really like and particular model for different reasons, right?
Right.
So if we think about like the Coakley sociolinguistic model, like
Yes.
that's too complicated. It's really interesting as a research item, and like just the idea of like looking at it and being like, well, no wonder I'm tired after I interpret. It's so complex, right? Like for that perspective, it's cool, right? But I tend to use the Colonimus model or the Gilles model for actual analysis of the work because it can pinpoint me to where they need or I need to focus, whether it's on understanding the source, whether it's on producing the target, whether it's
Yes.
on analyzing things, right? So it's a little more simple and not easy, but just broken down in a simpler pattern.
And maybe I'm doing that without those words. I
I'm
think
guessing that you
I'm
are
sure I
if
am.
you're having conversations about the practice, for
Yes.
sure. Yeah. And
And
then I
yeah.
think repeated practice, one of the things that I learned from Carol Pottery early on when I had no business being in trainings with Carol Pottery because I was a baby, was that practice makes permanent. So often we think of practice makes perfect, but practice
Ooh,
makes
I like that.
permanent. So
Yes.
how we practice is how we will perform. And so making sure that that practice is actually productive and intentional and includes enough of the realities of the work. So
Yes.
like I don't mean feedback in the way that we talk about it in teaching. I mean like back channeling input. Am I making it through to somebody? Do they understand what I'm saying? Am I getting natural kind of back channeling to my language production idea, right? So having practice in a way that is going to lead to how I want them to actually perform is the other half of the equation, right? I don't know that there's only two halves though, so I shouldn't say the other
Right.
half. It's a part of the equation.
Well, and I like that because I say also to students, I'm like, doing these videos when you have
Mhm.
no context, no feedback from the consumer if they're understanding, no dialogue among the
Nope.
people. I said, you're almost in the hardest version of what you're about to go do. I
Yep.
said, when you go do the job, you can go, wait, oh, you have a lot
Yep.
more. So I often tell that I'm like, you're in the hardest part.
Exactly. It's a
There's
good
other
point.
hard parts, but like this is not
Yeah.
real. I know this is how you get
Mhm.
tested though. So sadly,
Yes.
this is how we have to kind of work at this.
Yep.
Um, gosh, I could talk about
100%.
teaching stuff. I love all of that.
It's good.
I love talking about the work, hence why I wanted a podcast to talk with others about the work.
Yeah.
Um, what other future projects, if you weren't teaching, soon you will not be in
Yeah.
that official role. What are you gonna
Yeah.
do? What do you want to do?
Well, I want to interpret more. I love
Okay.
interpreting. As I said, it's my first love. So I spent the first, okay, let me do math. Hold on. 12 years of my career doing interpreting full time, mostly post secondary in master's and PhD level kind of coursework, academics, and then community work a little, and then courtroom is what I did for the first 12 years. And I worked full time for the Oregon courts for a year-ish before I started teaching at Western. So I'm excited to return to interpreting and working. It's an interesting thing to think about, like the trajectory of my career. When I started as a freelance interpreter and just as an interpreter, I felt like, well, yeah, I can make a difference like one at a time, kind of thing. And then I wanted to get into teaching so that there would be kind of a ripple effect of like I would affect these interpreters who would affect those consumers, and then these teachers who would affect these, right? And now I'm kind of back to like, yeah, I think I just want to work with individuals. I think I
A
just want
little
to
tired.
interpret. Just want to
Understandable.
interpret. And then in the last 5-ish years, I have also gotten my coaching credential through the International Coaching Federation. And so I do coaching of leaders in the interpreting realm, educators, managers, those kinds of people. And then have recently started training other people to become coaches in the interpreting realm. So I want to do that kind of thing and professional and have group coaching kinds of things for interpreter educators, but also I'm thinking about doing some group coaching around the connected interpreter concepts, maybe
Yeah.
for newer interpreters to help them kind of find their footing as they start their careers. Or even
Yes.
if they're kind of flailing about in mid-career, give them another kind of touch point for that.
I thought of a couple things. The ripple
Yep,
effect, it just made me put all the dots together that I did this master's program. It took me a while to get through it with a break in life and got back
yep,
and
yep,
uh did research, which I don't
yep,
consider myself. If I named myself, I wouldn't say I'm an academic. Like that is
yeah,
not something I identify. But I did it, and it was very
you
proud
did.
to get through it.
Yep,
Which then my thesis led me to providing workshops. So then I
yep.
became comfortable speaking to
Oh,
talking, which then
interesting.
made
Sure,
me more
sure.
comfortable talking to students. And
Yeah,
then now I'm like, okay, now I can do a podcast. Like there is a ripple effect
yeah.
of like what that led me, and I mean.
Interesting. Yeah.
I paid how much money to write this paper and do this, and I
Yeah.
gained 20 new nationwide colleague friends. Like, and they're
Yeah.
still my best friends. Like, there's a few people who
Yes.
are Marco Polo everyday
Yep.
friends. So there is definitely a ripple
And that
effect.
is what I love about our masters
Yes.
is that it connects people across the country so that
Yes.
we don't feel so isolated or like, well, that's just what we do here, but
Yes.
everyone else is way better. Like, no, we all are struggling. And we're all
Yes.
amazing. I mean, like it's not just the negative side. We're all
Yes.
amazing and we're all struggling. And let's do it together. I
And
love that.
everyone's doing it's cool to get together and be like, you are doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
So are you.
Right? Yes.
My hope sometime, and I will reach out to you and Elisa, or just
Sure.
my hope sometime is to say, who are 4 people who are ready to graduate? Can they come on and give a 15-minute spiel of what
How
their
fun.
research is?
Yes.
Like, I would
Yes,
love
yes,
to
yes.
hear how else are people supposed to hear about this stuff because not everybody's
Yep.
on Facebook to get your please fill out my survey thing.
Uh-huh.
The other thing I thought of to lead into the next thing I wanted to ask about
Sure.
is how okay, I'm done teaching, and then, okay, I've got all these cool other projects. And I know another thing about you is you're an artist also,
Mhm.
which I feel like that feeds probably big into many things you do. You have the creative mind to set these things up and do the things. And I'm a talkative person. I love talking with people. I can talk with anyone. So we all kind of have our things that lead us or lend us to certain areas. And that
Mhm.
made me think of, okay, well, just the field in general. I feel like I am an interpreter, and they stay in this not shallow, this singular lane
Yeah.
because we've
Narrow.
been told we need to. One.
Mhm.
Um, and I only say that because it does not mean you need to step out a role in your job.
No.
It means what I'm trying to say is not everybody needs to be an artist or a coach or a podcast host,
Mhm.
but man, I wish people would kind of nudge themselves in certain ways of like, I'm actually really good at this. Let me actually talk
Yeah.
about it more. People are so scared to share their skills. And that's why I'm excited to do this and why you do that, because we can
Yeah.
spotlight people of like, this guy knows what he's
Mhm.
talking about. Let's listen to him. So I'm just curious your thoughts on how we can like warm
Yeah.
people up and like, let's go. We don't have a clear path. You're not an employee, a
Mhm.
supervisor, and then the manager, and then
Yeah,
like we
there's
don't
not a
have
yep.
those. So I don't
Yep.
know what we can do to kind of like get people thinking to do more because we need more. And I like that you
It's
coach coaches because then there's people doing more stuff. So yeah,
yeah.
curious.
It's interesting because I think there might be a thread back to this anxious overachiever place.
Yes.
Because one of the things I realized, so I became a professional certified interpreter when I was like 19, which is
Yeah.
way too young to
Yep.
be an interpreter, A.
Yep.
And I did find work in the meeting transfer realm of things, right? But what it did to me as a human is that I was never a person anywhere that I went. I never belonged. Nobody ever wanted to know my opinion. I
You
didn't
are
have an opinion.
speaking.
I was a blank slate, right? Because that's what you're supposed to be.
My 20s were
Um,
hard. Same.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like,
And really it took I ended up going to a doctor's appointment with my husband because I also got married really young. Not at 19, but pretty, you know, not too long after that. But we got married really young. And I think we were married maybe like 5 years, and he had some sort of medical thing, and he wanted me to go with him to the doctor's appointment. So I went with him as his wife, right? Like that's what you do. And I just sat there, and
oh,
I didn't have anything to say. And then when we left, I was like, "Oh, I wonder about XYZ, or I wonder about this." And he was like, "That's why I brought you." And I was like,
be
I have been so
Amanda.
conditioned. Exactly. There was no Amanda. There was no
Ah,
Amanda because
you
I
is
everywhere I went, I was someone else's voice. I was someone
it
else's hands. I was someone else's thoughts. I was someone, and I was a baby, right?
right.
And so I think that there's something to that of
Yes.
like, there's something about interpreting that allows you to hide you. And
Yes.
lots
But
of
we're an
people are
actor.
looking for that.
We're an
Yeah,
actor every day.
absolutely. And it's really, really safe to be someone else's voice and
Yeah.
thoughts. It's really scary to be yourself.
Well, and I just immediately thought like
Yep.
the hardest moments in my life, like of divorce or things that I've gone
Yep.
through, it was hard to go to work every day during those moments, but it was almost the easiest because I didn't have to think about those hard
It
times.
wasn't you.
It
Yep.
wasn't
And
me.
it's all
And then
consuming.
when it was my 20 minutes were up, I was like, for
I
my
don't
off
want
20
to.
minutes. And then I was on for 20 minutes.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Don't
So I
be
wonder if it's
you.
who we attract who want to hide,
Ah,
or they want to perform in such a way that externally, right? So there isn't that internal development piece of it.
that's
And
so
then
good.
also there's this expectation, I think, that is an unspoken narrative in a lot of places that we are supposed to give our entire lives to our career, like 100% entire lives to our career. And I'll tell you from my own research and observations, whole uh, um, unhealthy interpreters are not a contribution to the field.
Good Lord.
Whole interpreters contribute positively to the field. Whole people who have their own interests, their own ideas, their own opinions, and then yes, also able to navigate the transition between this isn't actually about me or for me, and so I'm just here as service, and then this is about me and for me, and I will say something here. Because
Oh,
really for the longest time, probably like 10, 15 years, my very biggest fear, and I would have nightmares about this, that I was all of a sudden talking in an interpreting assignment, like my own voice, my own thoughts, my own things. Like that was my biggest nightmare, like dream, was that why are you talking, Amanda?
and
This isn't for you, right?
that's what's like bore into us in the interpreter training program. And I
Yeah.
get it because it needs to be clear because there are, I wouldn't even say a few bad apples. There's a
Oh
basket
my
of bad
gosh, so many
apples
bad
out there
apples. Yeah,
who
and
have
I don't want to
crossed
be
that line
associated with
so
that.
hard
Yes.
that understandable we have to be.
Yeah.
And I hate that I always have
But
to
what
make the
if we
dis
focused on the transitioning part? What if we
yes. Why
focused on the like when are you not and when are and
yes.
that's one of the things I've gotten out of coaching, right? So there's one of the rubrics for ICF talks about coaching presence, and it talks about how I don't have a predetermined outcome in mind for my client.
That's what
That's exactly
neutrality.
what we want. That's what we want as
Right.
an interpreter. But it doesn't mean I have no thoughts and opinions of my own anywhere else. It just means when I'm with my client, I don't have a preconceived idea about what they need to do with their lives.
Is this
Right? Like
where
that.
we can then bring in the concept of neutrality? Because how many times we're, well, I can't be, I'm a human, I have biases, and
Yeah.
yes, that will show up in our work, and yes,
Yes.
but
But
I
can
kind of
I
like that.
choose to just be present with you and what you're
Yes.
doing
But,
without imposing my crap?
but Amanda,
Can I
that
do that?
takes us taking care of our stuff, and that's the problem. Where do we
It's a
begin?
huge problem. Yeah. Because the other thing that I would say is, and one of the things that has transferred into my teaching is if you have unmet needs, as a human, you're bringing those to your assignments and you're
Yes.
looking for your clients to solve that for you, even
Yes.
even though you don't know. If you feel insecure, you're looking for your clients to validate you, not their job. That's a
Yes.
you job. That's not their job.
Yes.
Take care of that yourself, right? But because we've said your only value to this community is as an interpreter and a link to access, I don't really care about any of the other stuff that you do or who you are as a human. I only care about the service that you can provide in this space and be to this group. And I mean interpreters and the deaf community and the hearing community. I don't mean one specific group within that. Then we don't foster those other
We
things,
don't
which
do
is a
anything
really
else.
nice place to be because I can perform the crap out of all kinds of stuff and get all kinds of accolades
And that might
because I
continue.
can be excellent at being a blank slate, right?
Right. Well, and that also lot is kind of I feel like the feeling, the reason why we're very stagnant. We're very,
Hmm.
I got certified and I'm gonna ride this out for 30 years is good enough because no one's really asking for more. No one's ever pushing for more.
Yeah.
My CEUs mean shit. It's just to keep
Oh,
me.
I can't even go
I
there right
wrote,
now. Like, we don't
I
have that kind
wrote
of time,
CEUs.
Andrea.
I wrote
That'll be a
CEUs.
whole other diatribe
I
about
know.
CEUs. They're so,
That's why I'm figuring out how to offer
yeah,
CEUs for this
yeah,
stuff
which I'm
because
excited about.
it's a modality that many people, and it will be accessible and it will have
Yes.
all the things. I have deaf guests on. It is. We aren't, man, that's also true. And I feel like maybe the newer generations, the younger generations, are more of a mix of very, not individualized, but very wanting to be themselves. So
Hmm.
that is there, I see that.
Which
And
is
it's,
an interesting pendulum swing, right?
yes,
Because that's a different problem. If you want to be you
yes,
everywhere you go,
yes.
ha! So then I'm
Yeah.
kind of back to, are we teaching enough about this switch of what is the function you're serving here?
I
And
like
can
that.
you serve this function and then go be yourself in those other spaces? This isn't the space to be yourself. This is the space to provide a service and to meet a need. This isn't about you in the nicest way possible, right? And this is about you. But
That's,
can you occupy those different spaces?
man, that's like you've said the words of what I've been feeling and trying to like explain with the podcast and the conversations I have of like, of course I'm not in the middle of my interpreting going to be like, Andrea's got stuff to say. Like
No.
that's the job is the job.
Hmm.
And then also what I'm doing over here is going to only improve what we're doing over there. Like,
Yeah.
why don't
Yep.
we take value and time to work this part out? Because in the
Hmm.
end, it's going to help the interpreting part.
Yeah. Because the more we take
Man.
care of ourselves and have space for ourselves and deal with our crap and unpack and all of those kinds of things and feed our souls, our joy, all of those kinds of things, the more I'm able to step into this other space
Yes.
and hold space for them. I don't have to bring my
Oh,
crap for them to solve. I don't have to bring my stuff for them. I get to just hold space for their connection and their communication.
yes. And that you just put words again. That's why you're good at this. That's why you're a good teacher. I would say by early 30s, I'm like, or late 20s, early 30s, I was like, okay, I can do this better. Because it took
Yeah.
about 8 years of therapy. I'm like,
100%.
oh,
Yeah.
what?
100%.
I'm not angry. I'm not resentful. I'm
Yep.
not shoving who I am down into
Hmm.
a bit that don't come up. Like it's such a,
Yes.
ooh, that's so true.
Yep.
Ugh.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Any last words of advice? Any last things you
Mhm.
want to say? Anything to wrap it all up? Maybe you always want to leave people with.
Hmm. Interpreting is the best.
It is the
It's the best
best.
job. It's the most fun, and humans are infinitely fascinating. And it's also super duper hard because humans are
Fascinating.
fascinating, right? Like they're just and we rub up against things that shape us along the way, and then we shape others along the way as well. And I think what um what a luxury it is to get to be in a position to go and see things that normal quote unquote people don't get to be privy to, and see all the entire gamut of humanity. Um, what a luxury,
Isn't
and
it?
just amazing.
And the best friends I have in life are from this job, fellow
Yeah,
interpreters, deaf
yeah,
people.
yeah.
And yeah,
I was just going to say the only reason I have really strong opinions is because I care. And you mentioned that earlier,
yes,
right? Like it's
yes.
because I care deeply about this and I want to do it well and I want to do right by people and I want people to have access to the things and connected to the things that they like I care, and thus I have a lot of opinions.
But
And I've
like,
tried a lot of things, you know?
I feel like too, though, many interpreters don't have a lot of opinions.
Yeah, it's
Don't,
true.
we're regurgitating the same things to each
It's
other.
true.
And I'm like, here I am making a podcast about the same damn conversation I've had in the last 10 years, but I'm sick of these conversations. That's why I want to have them so maybe they can
Yeah.
evolve.
Yeah.
Um, but I like to tie in. I like your art. You're an artist, like actual physical artist of
Yeah.
creating things and as a teacher. And I'm like, that's just a lesson of people to find the thing in you that's like super cool and unique that you can bring to this field that
Yeah.
we all need to learn from you.
Yep.
And I love pointing that out to students of they're like, well, I just blah blah blah. And I'm like, we need that. By
Yep.
golly, do we need you? Because
Yep.
I can't one person, I only have this point of view. So
Exactly,
oh,
exactly. And if you give your heart and soul to interpreting and it's the only thing you can ever imagine yourself doing, there's a lot of really cool things about that. But it's also stifling is the word that's coming to my mind. Like you have to have other interests,
yes.
or you're, and quite frankly, if you don't, your interpreting will suffer. So giving yourself 100% to interpreting is actually a detriment to your interpreting skills.
Thank you.
Like you have to have other things, and that is going to improve your interpreting.
Yes. Oh, I could go
Yeah.
on and on.
Oh, I know. I know.
Uh, I always ask folks at the end to
Yeah.
highlight a deaf organization, nonprofit,
Hmm.
business. Who do you want
Yeah.
to talk about?
Yeah, we have a fairly new, well, I would say new at being as big as it is, organization called Bridges Oregon, that is a nonprofit in the state of Oregon that provides services. Oregon doesn't have like a deaf and hard of hearing services commission like a lot of states do.
Mm.
And so this organization has come about in the last probably 5 years, like with a lot of um, support coming behind it to actually provide services to the state of Oregon. So Bridges, Oregon is who I would highlight.
Awesome. I'll put that
Yeah.
in the show notes. And
Yeah,
I
I'll get you
also
the link.
want,
Yeah.
where can people find your podcast and the title again, just so
Mm,
they can find you?
yeah, it's Amanda's Musings is the title. And you can find it by going to arsmithstudios.com. And then in the upper right-hand corner, I think there is a link that says podcast. And it will take you to
And
blog posts that are the transcription of the podcast. And then within that, you can click on either Spotify or Apple to get to where
and
however you
and
listen.
they are in
And the
sign as well.
YouTube
Okay.
version. Yeah. And the
Okay.
YouTube in ASL. Yeah.
They're in the regular spots. And then
Yep.
also on your website, is there people can find stuff about coaching or mentorship
Yep.
or more stuff?
Coaching and consulting. Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. Absolutely.
Got a lot of resources.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Andrea. Yeah. It
I
was great.
appreciate it so much. We're looking
Such
forward
fun.
to your more episodes. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Thanks so
Thank
much. I'm excited.